I was getting older, of course, and life wasn't the same as it used to be. My days were quieter, filled with the little pleasures I'd grown to cherish. Tea in the morning, the smell of fresh flowers from my garden, and the soothing comfort of a hot shower. It was in one of those simple, quiet moments that everything changed. It was a warm afternoon, and the sun was beginning to set, casting a soft golden glow through the curtains. The house was still. I decided to take a long, relaxing shower. I stepped into the bathroom, feeling the familiar warmth of the water as it cascaded over my skin. The sensation of the water washing away the day's weariness was something I'd grown to love. I let the steam rise around me, wrapping me in a cocoon of heat and comfort. My mind wandered, as it often did in these moments. I thought of memories from long ago, of youth, of passion, but I never expected that the quiet reverie of my evening would be interrupted. Suddenly, I heard the door creak open. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but when I turned my head slightly, I realized the door wasn't just cracked open, it was wide open, and there, standing in the doorway, was my cousin and her friend. I hadn't heard them arrive, hadn't even known they were coming over. My heart raced in a way I hadn't felt in years. There was something in the way they looked at me, an intimacy that I hadn't expected. My cousin smiled softly, and her friend stood beside her, their eyes never leaving me. I should have felt embarrassed, standing there in the shower with nothing to cover me, but I didn't. The warm water continued to pour over me, and the room filled with a hazy mist. I felt their presence envelop me, a mix of curiosity and something deeper, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I stood still, the sound of the water blending with the soft rustle of their movements. My cousin stepped closer, her hand grazing the edge of the shower door. "We didn't mean to surprise you like this," she said softly, her voice like a whisper through the steam. Her friend, silent but ever present, took a step forward too, her eyes dark with something unspoken. There was a quiet moment that hung between us, as if time itself had slowed down. My heart thudded in my chest, but not out of fear. It was something else, a stirring, a deep sensation that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I watched as they moved closer, both of them, until they were standing right by the shower, close enough to feel the warmth of the water on their skin. Their clothes were still on, but I could feel the tension in the air, the way their eyes traced every movement of mine. And then, without a word, my cousin reached out and slowly opened the shower door. The cool air hit my skin, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I met her gaze, holding it, feeling the electricity of the moment course through me. She smiled again, that same soft, knowing smile, and her friend mirrored the expression, their closeness enveloping me. "I think we should join you," my cousin whispered, her voice low, filled with an intimacy that made my breath catch in my throat. I felt her hand on my arm, the sensation of her fingers against my skin, sending a shiver down my spine. Her friend moved behind her, both of them stepping into the shower, fully clothed, but not caring. The water soaked through their clothes, clinging to their bodies as they moved closer, until there was no space between us. I felt surrounded, enveloped by the warmth of the water and the heat of their bodies. My cousin's fingers traced a line down my arm, her touch gentle yet purposeful. Her friend stood close, her presence a silent, steady force. I felt the water drip down my skin, mingling with the fabric of their soaked clothes. It was an intoxicating sensation, being caught between them, feeling the closeness of two people I trusted deeply, two people who in that moment seemed to understand the longing I had kept hidden for so long. As the water continued to pour, my cousin leaned in closer, her lips brushing against my ear as she whispered, "You don't have to be alone anymore." The words hung in the air, soft and inviting. I felt her hand slide down my back, a slow, deliberate movement that made my skin tingle. Her friend, quiet but attentive, moved even closer, her breath warm against my neck. There was something so natural about the moment, as if it had always been leading to this. I had spent years thinking those days of passion, of closeness, were behind me. But here, in this unexpected moment, I realized that desire doesn't fade with age. It lingers, waiting for the right moment to resurface, to remind you of what it means to feel alive. The three of us stood there, the water cascading around us, our bodies pressed close. My cousin's hands explored my skin, her touch light but insistent, as if she had been waiting for this as long as I had. Her friend, still silent but her presence undeniable, reached out, her fingers trailing down my arm, mirroring the movements of my cousin. It was as if they were in sync, their every touch, every movement, orchestrated in perfect harmony. I closed my eyes, letting myself sink into the moment, feeling the warmth of their bodies, the steady rhythm of the water. There was no rush, no urgency, just a slow, deliberate unfolding of something that had been building for years. It was a feeling of being wanted, of being seen in a way I hadn't been in a long time. Their touch wasn't just physical, it was emotional, connecting me to something deeper, something I had long forgotten. My cousin leaned in again, her lips brushing against my cheek, a soft, lingering kiss that sent a wave of heat through me. Her friend moved closer too, her hands sliding down my sides, her breath warm against my skin. I felt myself surrender to the moment, letting go of the years of solitude, the years of believing that this part of my life was over. For what felt like hours, we stood there, the water pouring over us, their hands exploring every inch of me, their touch filled with tenderness and a passion that I hadn't felt in years. It was slow, deliberate, each moment savored, each touch a reminder that I was still capable of feeling, of wanting, of being desired. The world outside the bathroom seemed to disappear, leaving only the three of us in that intimate, shared space. I didn't know where the moment would lead, and I didn't care. All I knew was that in that moment, I wasn't alone anymore. The warmth of the water, the heat of their bodies, the closeness of their touch, it was everything I hadn't known I needed. And as the water continued to fall around us, I let myself be swept away by it, surrendering to the moment, to the passion, to the unexpected intimacy that had found me. My cousin's hand gently cupped my face, her thumb tracing my cheek in a way that made my skin tingle. Her eyes met mine, soft but intense, filled with something I hadn't seen in anyone's eyes for years. She leaned in, her breath warm against my lips, and before I could even process what was happening, her mouth was on me, soft, searching, but full of need. I closed my eyes, losing myself in the kiss, feeling every emotion that had been buried deep inside me rise to the surface. Her lips were tender, yet insistent, coaxing a response from me that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in so long. As we kissed, I felt her friend's hands move around my waist, pulling me closer. Her presence was just as intoxicating, her fingers tracing patterns along my wet skin, making me shiver with anticipation. I broke the kiss with my cousin, gasping for air, and in that brief moment, her friend's lips found my neck, pressing soft, heated kisses along the sensitive skin. I let out a soft sigh, my body arching involuntarily toward her, craving more. The three of us were entwined now, bodies moving in sync, the shower water mixing with the heat of the moment. My cousin's lips found mine again, more urgent this time, as her hand slid down my back, exploring every inch of me with a familiarity that felt both new and long-awaited. I felt her friend's lips travel lower, her kisses trailing down my chest, sending waves of pleasure through me that made it hard to stand. My hands reached out, tangling in their wet hair, pulling them closer, needing more, needing everything they were offering. I had never imagined feeling this way again, desired, wanted, like every inch of me was being worshipped. My cousin's lips never left mine, and her hands, delicate but confident, moved across my body, knowing exactly where to touch, how to make my breath hitch. Her friend, silent but ever present, continued her slow exploration, her mouth and hands working together to ignite sensations I hadn't felt in decades. Every touch, every kiss, every moment felt like it was unfolding in slow motion, the passion building with each second that passed. My cousin's friend was at my side now, her lips brushing against my ear as she whispered, "You're beautiful." The words sent a shiver down my spine, her voice low and filled with longing. Her hands moved with purpose, finding the curves of my body and pulling me closer still, as if she couldn't bear to be apart from me for even a second. My cousin's lips left mine, and as she smiled softly, a smile that told me she had waited for this as long as I had, her fingers brushed the wet strands of hair from my face before her lips trailed down my neck. Soft kisses, leaving a path of fire along my skin. Her friend joined her, their hands and mouths working in perfect harmony, each touch blending into the next until I could no longer tell where one began and the other ended. I moaned softly, the sound lost in the steady rhythm of the falling water. My body was alive, every nerve lit up with sensation as their hands roamed freely, exploring every inch of me. I could feel their desire, the way they moved with such care and intensity, as though this moment was as precious to them as it was to me. My cousin's hand slid lower, her touch gentle but insistent, and I gasped at the sensation. Her friend mirrored her movements, their fingers working in tandem as they explored me. The heat between us was almost unbearable now, the tension building with every soft touch, every lingering kiss. The water continued to pour over us, the steam rising around our entwined bodies, that all I could feel was the heat of their touch, the way they made me feel alive in a way I hadn't thought possible. I kissed them both, first my cousin, her lips familiar and soft, then her friend, whose kiss was filled with an unexpected fire. We moved together as though we had been doing this for years, our bodies fitting perfectly against each other, every touch sending waves of pleasure through me that left me breathless. There was no rush, no urgency, just a slow, deliberate unfolding of desire that felt endless. Every moment was savored, every touch, every kiss, a reminder of the passion that had long been dormant inside me. My hands moved over their bodies, feeling the wet fabric of their clothes clinging to their skin, the heat radiating from them as they pressed closer, leaving no space between us. I could feel the tension building inside me, the slow, steady rise of pleasure that threatened to overwhelm me. My cousin's fingers danced over my skin, teasing, coaxing more out of me with each passing second. Her friend's hands gripped my hips, her mouth finding the sensitive spots along my collarbone that made me gasp. The sensations were overwhelming, but I didn't want it to stop. I wanted more, needed more. The water around us seemed to fade into the background as the intensity of the moment took over. My cousin's lips found mine again, her kiss deep and consuming as her hands continued their slow, deliberate exploration. I felt her friend's mouth on my skin, her kisses trailing lower, her hands guiding me closer until all I could feel was them. Every touch, every kiss, every moment filled with a passion that left me trembling. And then, as if we were all moving together in perfect harmony, the tension that had been building between us reached its peak. I let out a soft cry, my body trembling with release, and they held me close, their arms wrapped around me as the waves of pleasure washed over me. The world outside the shower ceased to exist in that moment. It was just the three of us lost in each other, in the intimacy of the moment that had brought us together. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, the water still pouring down around us, our breaths mingling as we held each other close. My heart raced, but it wasn't out of fear or hesitation. It was from the sheer intensity of the moment, the realization that I had found something I hadn't even known I was looking for. Finally, my cousin smiled at me, her eyes soft but filled with a quiet intensity. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, echoing the words she had spoken earlier. Her friend nodded in agreement, her hand still resting on my waist, a silent promise of more to come. And in that moment, I knew they were right. I wasn't alone anymore. I had found something unexpected, something beautiful, something that made me feel alive. She looked up at me with those soft, knowing eyes, her lips curving into a gentle smile. I couldn't resist her, didn't want to. Leaning in, I kissed her again, this time slower, softer, letting the warmth of the moment wash over us. Her lips parted beneath mine, and I could feel the steady beat of her heart still in sync with my own. Her hands slid up my chest, fingers brushing against my skin as she pulled me closer. I kissed her deeply, savoring the softness of her lips, the way her body melted against mine. The barn felt like it had become our world, the silence around us punctuated only by the gentle sounds of our breathing, mingling with the rhythm of our kisses. I moved down, my lips trailing from her mouth to her neck, kissing her there, feeling the way she shivered beneath my touch. Her hands tightened on my shoulders, her body arching slightly as I kissed the sensitive spot just below her ear, drawing a soft gasp from her lips. We were wrapped up in each other, the outside world forgotten, as my hands moved over her body, memorizing each curve, every line. She responded to every touch, every kiss, her fingers digging gently into my back as she urged me on, her breath quickening as our lips met again in a slow, lingering kiss. Her hands moved to my face, cradling my jaw as she kissed me, deep and tender, our lips moving together as if we were the only two people in the world. I kissed her back with everything I had, pouring all the emotions, all the passion into each kiss. Every brush of her lips sent sparks through me, and I could feel her responding with the same intensity. We shifted, her body pressing closer to mine, and I pulled her into my lap, our lips never breaking. The way she kissed me, slow and deliberate, like she wanted to make this moment last forever, made my heart race. Her fingers tangled in my hair as she kissed me again, her lips soft and warm, her breath mingling with mine as we stayed wrapped up in each other. She kissed me with a tenderness that made my heart ache, and I kissed her back just as softly, my hands gently tracing the curve of her back, savoring the feel of her skin beneath my fingertips. The barn felt timeless, like the moment would never end, and neither of us wanted it to. Our kisses slowed, became softer, more intimate, as we held each other in the fading light. She rested her forehead against mine, her eyes closed, and I pressed one last kiss to her lips, a promise of everything that had just happened and everything that was to come. "Whatever happens," I whispered, my lips brushing hers, "we'll face it together." She smiled again against my mouth, her breath warm and steady, her lips finding mine again in one last soft kiss. "Together," she whispered back, her voice filled with certainty. And as we sat there, still wrapped up in each other, kissing softly, the world outside felt far away, and all that mattered was the connection between us.